20 times. He just got terribly sick at a time when he didn't have the drugs that are available to us today for treating depression.
He was suffering from depression, which we now know is a clinical condition. He was treated for it at the Mayo Clinic. I think he should have been treated for it. The manager, but Mary didn't want anyone to think he had any sort of mental problem. But they did something to him which he had always said he never wanted done, and that was a series of electroshock treatments, which certainly, if they didn't ruin his memory, handicapped him at least.
Despite his shock treatments, his depression grew worse. Hemingway was released from the Mayo Clinic on January 22, 1961. Newly elected President Kennedy asked Hemingway to write a tribute for his inauguration. Due to the effects of electric shock treatments, it took Hemingway an entire
and these kids are silent. They've been putting up with the university kids all their professional lives as cops. I don't think they've ever seen silent kids before. They knew that this was something serious.
Bloom writes that the call was passed to Sergeant Shane Gunderson. Gunderson, who on that day was midway through a 12-hour shift that had started at 6 a.m., was running the operations division at the sparklingly modernistic, it had opened barely 11 months earlier, Southview Avenue Police Headquarters. Prior to that moment, he would tell people his tour had been long and slow, a languid weekend morning, punctuated by the chimes of the town's many church bells tolling solemnly in the wind. In fact, he had spent a good deal of that desk-bound Sunday morning mulling something other than police business. Gunderson had been avidly mapping out in his mind a strategy for the 8-hour, or easily more, trek to the summit of Mount Bora. He and a friend from the University of Idaho Psych Department had been planning for the spring. It's Idaho's highest point, and the trail up the southwest ridge to the 12,662-foot summit is a steep, hard climb. And he would admit, after a beer or two, it was just the sort of challenge he'd been missing lately. Now that he had his sergeant's stripes, police work was more about distributing memos and filing papers than getting out into the field. That bothered him. Nearly 10 years on the force, he still wanted to be the gung-ho officer who had joined up straight out of Lewis Clark State College in nearby Lewiston and worked his way up from patrolman. In his early days, he had distinguished himself as a hands-on cop, someone out on the streets doing what the Moscow PD calls community policing. Back then, he'd scored a lot of points both in and out of the department, as well as winning the Officer of the Year honor in 2017, when he single-handedly planned and organized a hot dog barbecue, bringing together the cops and local school kids. He was from the area, growing up in small-town Potlatch, and still smarting from his own childhood run-ins. He knew only too well how hard-ass cops could sour things, make things confrontational. It was his job, he'd say with determination, looking out for and working with the citizens of Moscow. When the 911 call came in, Gunderson had a corporal and 2 other officers on duty to assist with patrol. He could have left the response to them. He certainly, he'd tell people with a hint of embarrassment, had no intimation of something out of the ordinary. That morning he was simply eager to break the monotony. And as always, he felt strongly it was important for him to get out on the street where people could see him. He swiftly decided he'd go to the scene too, with his officers. It was a quick trip. The roads leading into the university neighborhood that Sunday were as empty as the classrooms. And as soon as Gunderson's black and white cruiser pulled up behind the neat row of cars parked in the driveway of the austere, cantilevered house on King Road, he immediately knew something was very wrong. It was the noise. There wasn't any. Just an eerie, unnatural silence. A cluster of young people were wandering about, not merely subdued. They seemed stunned, as if drained by a deep and intense shock. When the 3 mystified officers approached the front door, someone in the crowd, it would later be shared, muttered a single plaintive word: dead. Still, Gunderson would confess to others he was unprepared for the strong smell of blood that rose up in his nostrils the moment he walked inside. The coroner, who had once been an emergency room nurse in an earlier stage of her life, would describe the scene in press interviews as chaos, lots of blood. Few others would even attempt to put into words what they saw. There are moments, cops will tell you, that are too profound, too unnerving, to be experienced in the present. All you can do is move forward. There will be time later to try to make sense of it all. Procedure takes precedence. It allows a protective membrane to be stretched between the real and the too real. All other thoughts, all other feelings become extraneous. The trio of officers, meanwhile, proceeded with haste to the second floor. They opened the bedroom door to find two dead bodies, a male and a female. The pair was gruesomely drenched in blood, yet both had their good-looking faces oddly preserved, like masks. Even at that probing moment, it was difficult, one of the young officers would later nearly wail, to look at the 20-year-old pair. They were Ethan and Xana. On the third floor, things got, if possible, worse. In one bedroom, lying in a single bed, were two inert women. It was Maddie and Kaylee. They might have been sisters, so similar were the 21-year-olds, pretty Barbie doll-like sculpted features, their long cascades of thick, streaked blonde hair falling down to their narrow shoulders. Yet in death there was one gruesome difference. Kaylee, it would be reported, had been hacked with a particular ferocity. It was as if her wild assailant, or was it assailants, had been intent on gouging out chunks of her flesh. Large punctures was how the lacerations had been described. Maddie's wounds, while no less fatal, appeared less feral, more measured, at least in comparison. Across the narrow hallway was one final door. The officers pulled it open, and at last, they discovered a sign of life. A fluffy, caramel-colored dog. It was Murphy, Kaylee's frisky labradoodle. He was unharmed, not marred by even a speck of blood. A small consolation, and barely one at that, for all they had seen and were only beginning to process. Later that day, around 4 p.m., a police officer named Brett Payne arrived at the scene. He would go on to interview the two surviving roommates, Dylan and Bethany, who in the affidavit he would file were only identified as DM and BF. Here is, directly from the affidavit, what he learned from his interviews with both Dylan and Bethany, although it appeared Bethany had slept through the commotion on floors above her first floor bedroom. DM and BF, quoting here from the affidavit, both made statements during interviews that indicated the occupants of the King Road residence were at home by 2 a.m. and asleep, or at least in their rooms, by approximately 4 a.m., he wrote. This is with the exception of Xana Kernodle, who received a DoorDash order at the residence at approximately 4 a.m. Law enforcement identified the DoorDash delivery driver, who reported this information. DM stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor. DM stated she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. by what she stated sounded like Gonsalves playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms, which were located on the third floor. A short time later, DM said she heard who she thought was Gonsalves say something to the effect of, "There's someone here." A review of records obtained from a forensic download of Kernodle's phone showed this could also have been Kernodle, as her cellular phone indicated she was likely awake and using the TikTok app at approximately 4:12 a.m. DM stated she looked out of her bedroom but did not see anything when she heard the comment about someone being in the house. DM stated she opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying coming from Kernodle's room. DM then said she heard a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." At approximately 4:17 a.m., a security camera located at 1112 King Road, a residence immediately to the northwest of 1122 King, picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper, followed by a loud thud. A dog can also be heard barking numerous times starting at 4:17 a.m. The security camera is less than 50 feet from the west wall of Xana Kernodle's bedroom. DM stated she opened her door for the third time after she heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. DM described the figure as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built, with bushy eyebrows. The male walked past DM as she stood in a, quote, frozen shock phase. The male walked toward the back sliding glass door. DM locked herself in her room after seeing the male. DM did not state that she recognized the male. This leads investigators to believe that the murderer left the scene. We'll get back to the affidavit in a bit. Dylan then locked her bedroom door until the morning, in a decision that would just befuddle so many people. Why? Why? Why didn't she do more? You don't know the answers, but surely you will by the time this case is tried. Then, sometime after 11 a.m., the roommates attempted to wake their friends. They were unable to, and they would call others to the house for help. There, at least one of those friends finally dialed 911. Howard Bloom, again with us, back in March.
One
Right.
kind of associated.
Raise all sorts of questions, as I do at the same time. I think one has
GoPros and
to
stuff
cut
are
this
coming
poor
out,
girl a little slack.
and getting
In
integrated
many ways,
with
she's a
like
victim
snuff
too.
products.
She will live with this
Yeah.
for her entire
Yep,
life.
and then
He said he was offered
She
$2,000
saw something
yeah, it might get peddled.
incredible, astonishing, and she's just perhaps
just
couldn't
kinda
deal with it.
Loose ties.
Back to Sergeant Gunders.
oftentimes to-
He quickly called his boss, Captain Roger Lanier, the head of the 24
different
Officer
motivating
Operations
factors,
Division.
different-
He found him, not
It's like a
unexpectedly for a
sales
Sunday,
game,
sitting
you
down to
get
lunch with his
through
family.
So many until you
Lanier
might
was a
have
veteran
one that
cop.
bites at
He had spent more than 20 years on the
certain
force in
things.
nearby Lewiston, before having been lured 6 years earlier to Moscow with a
Yeah,
captain's
exactly.
rank. After all his years on the job, he'd
I
become
think
a
that's where
steady,
some of the
avuncular
concerns were
presence.
with that
A
specific
bald-headed,
case she's
genial cop.
talking about.
He never got flustered because, as he would
Yeah,
tell
and it's
people,
nothing to take it with a grain of
It's seen it all.
salt. It's just kind of, again, an awareness thing.
but Gunderson's
Understand
report
that.
left him unnerved. It took me a second, he recalled, a sharp edge, even weeks later, to the memory. I really had to think about what I'd just heard. 4 murders in Moscow, Idaho, was so out of character.
At the time, they were fairly certain it was college students and it was near the campus, and that area is kind of a campus community. So once I got over the initial shock, I knew that I was coming to the station. So I drove in, and everybody just kind of fell into a role that was all hands on deck moment. Sunday afternoon. It became fairly apparent when I got to the scene that we were going to need resources outside of just what the Moscow Police Department could provide.
But quickly, Lanier's professionalism took control. He had 1,000 questions, and yet he knew the only hope of finding answers would be to follow the previously established protocols. Dutifully, he gave the orders to set up the perimeters of the crime scene, to bring in the forensic team, and to summon the coroner. It was standard in a major case, and if 4 homicides was not a major case, what was? To alert the Idaho State Police, and he did that too. Moscow was the responsibility of the state's District 2 Detective Office in Lewiston, the county seat, and where he'd been on the job for 2 decades, and he knew many of the state detectives. There wasn't companionship. Still, it was a difficult conversation, but his next call was harder. The university had to be informed. It was not just that 4 students had been brutally murdered in an off-campus home, but there was no way of knowing whether the killer or killers planned to strike again. The students needed to be warned. At 2:07 p.m., a little over 2 hours after the 3 cops had entered the blood-soaked house, the University Office of Public Safety and Security sent a vandal alert email to the students and faculty. Quote, Moscow PD investigating a homicide on King Road near campus. Suspect is not known at this time. Stay away from the area and shelter in place. End quote.
You hear the families.
A shelter-in-place order requires people to take refuge in a...
A few couple families are who sued me. I only ever said the name of one parent. Okay, under the law, you're not supposed to be able to sue somebody. She said their name. So I didn't know what was happening until last year when we got the documents. People pointed it out where find it. Mike Benz type folks, not him, was in the public record. So I'm sitting there for like 2 years before they sue me. I haven't even talked about it in years before they sue me. I'm like, I think it happened. Stop saying I did this to you. They were running ads on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Where it wasn't for gun control, it's Alex Jones attacking us. They're attacking our children. We need money. So we later learned they raised at one charity, just run by two of the parents, $300 million off of my name over like a 5-year period. And it's directly off of me. Like, they attack me, the money goes for nothing. They sue me this. The show trials happen, boom. We then learned that the Justice Department would pay the Connecticut law firm 1 to 2 weeks before each time they would put their bill in each year, and then the Justice Department would give that exact charity, a couple of them, millions of dollars. We have all the screenshots off the federal websites, all this, okay? And there's a lawsuit being filed imminently, probably even today, finally, my civil rights lawsuit for all of this. So I didn't understand what's going on. Like, why am I on every channel? I barely ever talked about this. I'm in restaurants, people are going, quit making your money off those kids. They're saying I made hundreds of millions off these kids. They're saying I have hundreds of, I never made hundreds of millions. My company had made gross hundreds of millions, but that's like, you sell a water filter and you make 35% on it. This guy sold $10 million of water filters. Yeah, we made $3.5 million and we advertising and crew. It's like, you know business. So this company made $60 million this year. Yeah, and about $20 million of it was genuine profit. You pay half a taxpayer employees, So, but they're saying he's got hundreds of millions he made off these people. They're telling the juries, but here's the key. They said I never gave him discovery. I gave him all the discovery, everything. It was made up that I didn't give him discovery. Then the judges find me guilty. It's called a default, which they did to Mike Lindell recently, last year. Mike Lindell said Smartmatic and Dominion were doing things that were wrong. They've since been indicted. They've since had to admit a lot of it. But you know what happened to Mike Lindell? 6 months ago, the federal judge said, I'm ruling, you type this in, judge finds Mike Lindell guilty, Smartmatic. The judge said, I find you guilty. There's no way to access a Smartmatic remotely or by the internet, even though it's built into them with phones. And so now he's going to tell a jury this year that Mike is guilty and the jury will rule against him. So that's default right there, okay? Judge rules. My pillow guy, Mike Lindell, defamed Smartmatic with false claims. He was defaulting. But in this case, the judge didn't even say he didn't give him discovery. They don't want his discovery. It's all to prove he was right. The judge is finding that it's impossible because these machines cannot be accessed. They have cell phones built into them and ports plugged into them. We have famous cases in the elections where the Dominion and Smartmatic crews come in during the elections and plug in. Everybody knows that. So the point is, this fundamental lie, this is how they get you now. We need major reform over this default garbage. So both judges in Texas and in Connecticut find me guilty. They then have show trials after 4 years suing me, 1 month after the next, right before the midterms. Okay? Last time before. Right before 2024. No, 2022. And so I'm in there, and there's lights, and they're putting powder on the judge and the other people, and the judge kicks the jury out, just cuts off the YouTube feed and says, now there's 20 things you can't say. You can't say you're innocent. You can't say you don't have 400 million, all this stuff. And I'm like, and so people say, why are my lawyers defending me? She would then go have conferences behind the deal, not have a record of it, and tell them, I'll sanction you, you can't do it. So it was literally totally rigged. First I'm guilty, but now she's got to have the show trial where the jury's told I'm guilty, given false evidence. They put on days of evidence that I had $300 million in the bank. The man never examined our files, it was just totally made up. He said our whole business model was different than it was. He talked with first and the how of the third. Wasn't even, and then the jury, we talked to them later, they go, well, since you got $360 million, we thought they deserved 10% of your money. I mean, 45 million. And meanwhile, I was negative in the bank then and had never made more than myself like $8 million, $10 million a year. Okay, those are my best years ever. I needed it for legal fees anyways. So I'm just sitting here, and the judge said those 2 days, you are not allowed to put on a defense. We had to sit there and say not one word why this guy just gets up there and makes up a complete fantasy land. She's literally you go to her Facebook, she supports, Antifa, everything else. Her judge's name is Gloria Gamble. And Laura Gamble? Guerra Gamble.
There it is, yeah, Guerra Gamble.
Yeah, and then she is literally, used to have like on her face with blue hair. And,
Her?
yeah, that's her. And
What do we know about her?
in Texas, the judges are elected. She's literally financed by consortiums of Soros money. And, she's just unbelievable. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
So where's it at now?
Well, listen, it gets
Where's
worse.
it now?
Then a few years later, the HBO produced a documentary. Okay, so it's all scripted. I'm forced to be an actor in this. I didn't understand until later. That's why I couldn't talk unless they said. Couldn't say I was innocent. And she walks the red carpet at South by Southwest, where this is the main premiere at the big giant movie theater, with everyone clapping like she's a movie star. Judges aren't supposed to be in a movie about their own deal that they shoot during the trial and then walk the red carpet and be part of the event. That is unbelievable. Sorry, go ahead.
No, where is it at now? What I want to, how much have you paid? What can you disclose to us? What's next?
Well, yeah, that's how the lie always works. He refuses to pay the families. Of the 20 families, only 6 people sued me. Never said the names of anybody but one person. And so they got a $45 million judgment in Texas. They got a $1.4 billion in Connecticut. The interest on it's like $600 million already. If you remember, they asked for $2.67 trillion or 2.76. What was it? Guys, type in Bloomberg. Sandy Hook families lawyers asked for over $2 trillion. And so, which is the GDP of India, and it's all about horrifying people. It's all about driving people into submission. So,
Stop it.
yeah, 2.75 trillion. I'm sorry.
Sandy Hook family said a Connecticut judge should impose the highest possible punitive damages for Alex Jones, suggesting by one calculation could be as high as 2.75 trillion.
And they-
Plus couldn't pay that. Countries couldn't pay that. Where did they come up with 2.75?
The U.S. couldn't pay that right now.
Where did they come up with that number?
They got up and said to the judge. In fact, there's another Bloomberg headline that says lawyers for the families asked for 2.75 trillion. So you ask where this is going.
Trump's got big problems. Asked God to free him from the demonic influences. I like Alex. I have to say this though. With all due respect to the work that he's done, he's appeared on my show.
And none of them have been talked to. But if you look, a couple of the women in there were actually girlfriends after that.
He was very sick the last time he came on Tim Guest IRL over in Austin, and he had to leave the show early because of his inebriation. Again, with all due respect to the work that he's done, I'm a big fan, and he did apologize for this. I can only address it because everyone knows it happened. I'm not trying to be mean to the guy, but it did happen, and he apologized. He did. So, now, here's the thing: they can't ban you from it. So while we are concerned about censorship and what the future may hold, make sure you guys are protecting your ability if you want to trade value. If you want to buy Bitcoin or Tether or any of these things, do it in a way that can't get you banned. That's what non-custodial means. Check out wallet.rumble.com. Download today, and I appreciate the guys supporting the show. But let me show you what we're currently at. So this part of the Daily Beast is just the example of them saying, look, MAGA is broken. We have this from media. Alex Jones says Trump's got big problems. Asks God to free him from the demonic influences. I like Alex. I have to say this, though. With all due respect to the work that he's done, he's appeared on my show several times, blackout drunk, sickly, and seriously ill. And for that, I believe he deserves some criticism. There are a lot of people that are upset about it. He was very sick the last time he came on Tim Guest IRL over in Austin, and he had to leave the show early because of his inebriation.
Someone in class said he's probably connected to a lot of people that would expect him to say such things, considering all the sponsorship and loyalty buys. I mean, I don't know if I can agree with that, but it makes sense. I'd say, yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that. I'm only saying that because I'm not really sure where you're completely coming from. But if it's where I think you're coming from, then yes, I agree with that.
Work that he's done, I'm a big fan. And he did buy Bitcoin or Tether or any of these things.
Tell them it's real.
Banned. That's what non-custodial means. Check out wallet.rumble.com. Download today, and I appreciate the guys supporting the show. Let me show you what we're currently at. So this part of the Daily Beast is just the example of them saying, look, MAGA is broken. We have this from media. Alex Jones says Trump's got big problems. Asks God to free him from the demonic influences. I like Alex. I have to say this, though. With all due respect to the work that he's done, he's appeared on my...
So someone in class is stepping in and saying they think what they kind of mean by that is using another situation, like Robert De Niro. He starts talking about the vaccines, or that dude we just saw on Bill Maher, said if they even talk about the vaccines or certain things, the claws go in and they get very angry. Right. And that's just, people around him. So when those claws going in aren't just your wives and daughters or silly, uneducated people around you, over dramatic, entitled, spoiled brats, and it's sponsors giving you a lot of money to promote certain ideas that don't favor certain people or businesses. Yeah, that makes total sense, actually. Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Several times blackout drunk, sickly, and seriously ill. And for that, I believe, he deserves some criticism. There are a lot of people that are upset about it. He was very sick the last time he came on Tim Guest IRL over in Austin, and he had to leave the show early because of his inebriation. Again, with all due respect to the work that he's done, I'm a big fan, and he did apologize for this. I can only address it because everyone knows it happened. I'm not trying to be mean to the guy. But it did happen, and he apologized. He did. It's not the first time he's done it. He, we had a morning culture war show with Alex talking about the state of the world, and it was one of the best shows we've ever done. And so it is sad when he could be serious and we could have conversations, but he doesn't. He just shows up drunk. So I do think he does have a lot of good things to say, however. Whatever people want to claim. All right. I brought this up this morning, but I'm going to bring it up now. Last night on Timcast IRL, I made the point that the internet is largely composed of fake news, clips that are taken out of context for the purpose of smearing or claiming something supports you. So I made a fake post. Oh, I should say this. I said, watch. Everybody's lying about everything. They get clicks. They can make things up. It'll work. And we don't do that. But you know what? I can do it right now, too. Watch. Then I said, Trump called me on the phone. And then said, see, that's fake, but people will clip it, share it out of context. And sure enough, tons of people did. Like clockwork. They didn't watch the show. They don't care to watch the show. They just want something that will generate traffic. That's the nature of reality. Now, by all means, if you are a first-order thinker, maybe second or third, you're going to see that clip, and you will see the responses where people...
After they were adults and worked for Epstein for over a decade, and it turns out worked for George Soros. So see, I'm not trying to demonize the women. I'm just saying what you're seeing is not what you're actually getting here. Okay? And so it doesn't go down to all the kids that got eaten. It doesn't go down to all the kids that got strangled.
Some of these girls that are up there, you're saying worked for Soros.
One of them, I can pull it up, currently does on the Tides Fund.
Clip, Rob.
Ask them if that's true. Now, would the survivors and victims who are here please stand up one more time? Just by show of hands, how many of you or your loved ones actually have met with the Department of Justice and provided testimony and evidence? None. And of those of you who have not met, which is everyone, how many of you have reached out either individually or through a lawyer or representative to offer to provide testimony and evidence? All of them. And of those all of you who have reached out, how many of you were denied or ignored by the Department of Justice? All of them. And despite the shameful and despicable efforts by Ms. Bondi and her department to intimidate you, how many of you are still willing to speak to the Department of Justice? All of them. Well, Ms. Bondi, it looks like you have some more witnesses to talk.
Expired. Now, I'm not defending Bondi. She's involved in the cover-up. I get into how and why for more information. But then she knows it's a whole other level because I'm not saying all the women. I forget her name. I can pull it up. You see the one right there with the large breasts and short in the middle, like kind of strawberry blonde hair. I can pull her name up. Her. Yeah. She is high-level operative. She met Epstein at 21. Basically worked for them for her name. I can pull it up, but she worked for them. It's in the news. She worked for them for almost 10 years. And then the point is, a lot of these people are in the emails. So you have to understand, guys, why does it stop at 14, 15-year-old girls? Because they don't want you. And the Republicans don't want to go there. The Democrats don't want to go there. They don't want to go to, we got the sex slave at the Hyatt. The finances been taken care of. Okay, yeah, I just bought these babies from these women. Yeah. I mean, and then you have police reports of women saying, yeah, I'm at Zorro Ranch. They took my baby away from me. You have police reports from totally separate deals, and then you have the files, him talking about the same thing. Hundreds of emails. We have the smoking guns. We need 100 FBI agents out there with ground-penetrating radar digging up Zorro Ranch. They need to be tearing out the walls into all these places. Where are the hundreds of hard drives they took out of Zorro Ranch? That's the real cover-up, okay? So everything's a limited hangout. Everything stops with, these girls that got recruited at 14. Oh, it's so terrible. And yeah, okay, it is terrible. But the ones that got killed, committed suicide, were the ones that explained. No, those other girls, most of them, they worked for Epstein. They were the ones managing it, running it. In these emails, they would have a girl, 12, 13 that they grab, and they bring her there, and it's in the emails. And he's like, "You're a fat slob, and you better take care of these men, or we're gonna make you stay in this closet." closet, but once you're nice, you can hang out with the nice ladies upstairs. So they would use female control and females wanting to be with females, socially to get these women with peer pressure into the Stockholm syndrome. And so all I'm saying is, when Bondi knows full well that if she goes and talks to those women, they already know what the setup is, and there's been a deal made above that.
Interesting. So there's a risk to talk to them. Because the average person watching this, Alex, is going to be like, well, remember the debate with Hillary and Trump. And Trump says, let me tell you who we have here. He had all the ladies that were accused, that were victims of Bill Clinton. And she didn't know how to handle it. And the audience looked at it. I would say that was one of the biggest stunts that helped Trump beat Hillary. The average person who watches this, they look at it and say, why don't you talk to the victims? Why don't you go speak to them? Why don't you want to hear their stories? What is the risk for Bondi to speak to them?
Again, I want to be clear. I'm trying to show people the different angles of the 35,000-foot view. I think Bondi's handled this terribly. I believe they are involved in a cover-up, which has led them right into this disaster. Now, I want to answer your question, but first I want to say this. That's why Trump has to go there with all the human sacrifice, with the blood drinking, with the black magic on the blackboard, with the buried bodies, with the buying babies, with the disappearing children, and it's all Democrats connected to it. Instead, as Bondi said in the hearing yesterday, she said it'll bring down the stock market if this is known. I've said that about 500 times. Not that I agree with that, but I've been told, right before Trump got reelected, they said, listen, Mossad, British intelligence, CIA ran this. It's really a giant money laundering operation, which we already knew. Mike Pence proved it. Trump believes that it's also cold. There's no way to prove it. The Democrats have had the file. They're going to twist it. He's been convinced it's all disaster. It's old news. It's designed to be a tar baby, which it is. So he's going to say, let's just move on. But I explained at the time, and I've told the White House this, you can't. It's a trap. This is how the people that are guilty trick you into becoming an accomplice and then manage it and turn it around and politically destroy you. Then, of course, none of the truth ever comes out. It's all a giant smokescreen of garbage and fake AI and the rest of it. So I was just simply bringing that clip up, not to obfuscate from the clip, that's why I raised it, but to say, here's the other layers to it that are going on. Now, to answer your other question, yes, this looks absolutely horrible. She looks like a deer in the headlights. She looks like she has a gun to her head. Like when we saw Bongino and Patel 11 months ago get up on Fox, and they go, I know he said there were another shooter in Pennsylvania. There wasn't. Epstein acted alone. In fact, he wasn't even a child trafficker, and he had no accomplices, and he killed himself, and the Easter Bunny is real. And everybody turned against him because we'd already studied it. We knew it wasn't true, plus it was a 180. So it's the same thing. It looks terrible. It is terrible. It's hurting Trump really bad. It's hurting America. And again, my frustration is it lets the Democrats, who are the ones that are really guilty, if you look at the evidence, pretend that it's Trump and the Republicans that are the pedo protection party. And notice they're not going to the big reports of top Democrats and people raping kids and all the witnesses and everything. They're focusing on Lutnick, which is fine. Lutnick obviously was in business with him, obviously moved in next door to him, lied and said he only saw him once and thought he was a creep and ran out of his house with his wife, and then a couple years later, he's out on his island with his kids. Okay, no. But Lutnick's never been implicated in any of the illegal stuff. Fine. Fire Lutnick, or if you found him in a crime, indict him. But let's spend as much time on the hardcore cannibalism, Satanism, human trafficking, buying, selling children, and that's Democrats.
They're not there yet. They're not there yet, by the way. It doesn't seem like they're there yet. This is the clip I think you were talking about, Rob. You may want to fast forward to the part. No, I get that. Go for it, Rob. When he starts saying, yeah, go ahead.
He killed himself. You want me to get... I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
This is the clip you were talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, so, a part of it for me yesterday, I watched the Bondi hearing, and I asked myself, I couldn't find one clip that made her look good. Not one. Typically, these hearings, you'll say, okay, she won this one, they won this one, this was even, this was whatever, nobody won here, she took this one. I don't know if I found the clip. Now, don't get me wrong. The whole fighting back and pushing back and all that stuff, was that present? Sure. Asking Jasmine Crockett, You know, she goes for 5 minutes, doesn't ask a single question. You know, or the other lady who doesn't bring up Hakeem Jeffries or calling out a lot of these people. That's great. There's a part of it that some people are speculating. Tell me what you think about this. Where the DOJ or the AG was monitoring what the representatives were searching when they were going to look at the Epstein files. I don't know if you saw that or not. Rob, do you have that?
I'll find it.
There's a story going around that they were actually monitoring what these representatives were searching when they went to look at Epstein files. What do you know about that story?
Oh, I'll guarantee you that was going on. I mean, I haven't seen the story, but of course they were. Everything in those computers is being monitored, and there's a record of it.
So meaning, if I'm whoever I am, I'm going to go out.
It's just like when you search your own files or you search Google, they're searching your private database at the DOJ. Of course, they know who logs in, this congressperson, and then now they know what they're going to look at. They have a record of it.
So they know exactly what you're looking at. Why would they want to know what you're looking at?
I mean, by default, that's the way computers work. I don't know if that story is particularly true. I just know that's the way computers work.
Yeah, where is that story that Rob that's saying that happened?
Right here, this is Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina said full release of the names of the Epstein files would shock the world. And then there is an article here this morning, Justice Department tracking which Epstein files lawmakers are searching for, opening, and reviewing. According to this is Nancy Mace as well.
Yeah, that's it. That's a 2-month-old story as well on what they're looking at. I guess it makes sense to see what person's story they're interested in. The other part of it is...
Well, I mean, it means the watchers are... Who's going to watch the watchers? And so, I agree it's Big Brother. I'm just saying by the very nature of it, they have the technology, so I'm sure they are monitoring what they're watching.
I would assume this is something both sides probably do. The other part of it is, you know the Dems, they only want one person. They want Trump, right? They want to get Trump. You know, this has been going on under 4 presidents that people have been looking at. Why is it that it's fallen on this administration's mishandling of the files? Because right now the left is running with this. They're saying they're hiding it. Massey and Ro Khanna are coming together. This is not a good look on the current administration.
Well, you just nailed it, but going back to your last thing you said about bonding, and then I'll cover that, if I may. Even Senator Kennedy, who's a Republican and likes her, he had to tear her up on Epstein. I mean, so even Senator Kennedy had to nail her, and that's because she's been sitting there to sell something that isn't going to sell, and everybody keeps blaming her and blaming even Todd Blanche, who, by the way, doesn't like me. I'm not defending him. They're following Trump's directives, and I said this, about a year ago when the cover-up started, and it's been since confirmed. So it's Trump that thinks it's a distraction and a diversion, a tar baby, which it is, but it doesn't matter because exactly the Democrats never wanted to touch it. They covered it up. They controlled the files. That's why there's all these clips going around. I saw today of Don Lemon, just 3 years ago, going, how dare the Republicans try to investigate the Epstein files? This is bigoted, and this is horrible, and this is crazy, and this is terrible. So yeah, and that's what Trump should be pointing out. You're the pedo party. You're the sexualized kids party. It's all the Democrats that are in these files. But because there are so many big bankers and British royalty and all of it, he has been told, that's what I was told, again, I've said this probably 100 times, I said Trump has been convinced that it will crash the economy of all these bankers and people if this stuff comes out, and he thinks it justifies the means. It's too dangerous. And look, Trump, I'm not pushing this, I'm saying let's look at his perspective. The carbon taxes have been estimated by top experts, and they put them in the next decade to kill 2 billion people by starvation or war. Okay, Trump just got us out of the Paris Accord. They've secured the border. They found half of the 500,000 missing children. They've got no tax on tips. The economy is starting to turn around. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Getting men out of women's sports, exposing the NGOs, the election fraud. I mean, it's great. That's why it's paradoxical. I want Trump to succeed, but he has to understand that this has become a litmus test.
They're not going to win here if they continue going this way. If they continue fighting, opening it up, this is just going to make it seem like they're hiding something more and more and more. So what should they do? Should they release the whole thing? Well, what is the right move to make here? And by the way, before you answer that question, guys, you've been asking this for a long time. It's official. Alex Jones is on Manect. You can officially ask him any questions on Manect. And I know for the longest time you guys have been saying, let's get Alex on. Rob, I don't know if the QR code is going to be on the bottom or not, or an ability to ask him questions. You guys may have stories of Epstein, angles, other questions, things you want to share with them. You can officially Manect them. Go ahead, Alex.
So, did I answer your last question?
No, so I asked the question, so what should they do? Because for me, as I'm sitting there, if I score the biggest victories, crime, murder down 20%, border, beautiful, safe, people feel safe, having their kids play outside, San Diego, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, nice, we're winning in some of these areas.
DC.
Right, DC, safer, all crime, all this stuff. Minnesota, Minneapolis, ICE, maybe a couple fumbles there, sure. This is number one fumble. And so if they hired 5 advisors to go sit in a room with them, these are logical players, you're one of them, what counsel do you give to them?
Well, when I was driving here this morning, I know the White House watches your show. They watch mine, but not as much. But I've been told by the folks they love your show, and I hope they listen. I know they listen. Mark Mitchell, the pollster, was on my show a few months ago, and they really liked what he had to say. So the vice president brought him to meet with Trump and tried to explain the same stuff. Which Mitchell was on my show yesterday, just saying, "This is you got to stop. He's doing right. He's one of the most accurate pollsters. It's killing Trump. My family, people on the street, my callers, my listeners. I've got my finger on the pulse. I don't need a poll to tell people. People want a rebel that goes after the evil deep state. We cut our teeth exposing the Democrats to the pedophile protection party. It's Keir Starmer was the head judge that would prosecute one pedophile for 15 years in the UK and protected the Islamic grooming gangs. And then now he's all tied in with all these people at Epstein's Island, and he won't resign. I mean, it's like they're up to their eyeballs in the real stuff, and Trump is just saying, "I'm not involved. I didn't do anything. I dropped the dime," which is in the FBI files. Well, where's Trump at a press conference? See, I was the FBI informant. I got him arrested 18 years ago. I broke down Roger Stone like 11 years ago before he even ran. So that's what's crazy is, though, he knows there's so much garbage. And that's what they explain. They go, "Sir, in the last year of Biden, they implemented this tip line." And I was talking to people that were in the cabinet meetings when they convinced him of this. They go, "Sir, they implemented this tip line, and anybody by fax or email or phone can call in and fill out a report. So schizophrenic women, like in August, you'll call in and say, I was at Mar-a-Lago, and Trump and Elon, raped me, and all of a sudden it turns out they weren't even at Mar-a-Lago then." Or another report, "I was at this golf course this year, and Trump raped me and did this." The golf course wasn't built for 5 years. So Trump goes, "What, you mean there's a public?" And now, sir, you see Jamie Raskin and Schumer, "Trump is in the files 1,000,000 times." Well, because it's all, so now they've got this ongoing tip line. So when you hear that there's 3 million more files they haven't given you, next month it'll be 5 million. You understand? Because it's a perpetual motion machine. It's a cornucopia. It just spews it. So I'm not defending this. I'm telling you what Trump's been told. And that's why I said he's told it'll crash the stock market. Bondi yesterday, it'll crash the stock market. And it's not like if they had targets they could get, or even a few of their own people they can sacrifice, they do it. They know it's a giant mess of BS and crap. And then the women that are the victims and the survivors, almost all of them were, got into it, and that's how it worked. And we're actually madams, out running these operations. And now they've been recruited, snapped up by the Democrats. They're now on the payroll. That way, all the Democrats that are in there can be protected by the witnesses. Oh, we're not going to talk about kids disappearing or beef jerky. We're not going to talk about one piece of pizza that's glowing and loving, and you're going to love it for 7 people. We're not going to talk about, we'll deliver
These are the files?
Oh, yes. We'll deliver the 7, 9, and 12-year-old to the hot tub for your entertainment, Mr. Podesta. Remember, they're children, but they're well-trained, but you got to, And it's not just it's also in the WikiLeaks files. So all the same crap is in there that is in here. And it all just goes.
This is the clip you were talking about, Rob, if you want to play. Don Lemon on Anderson Cooper saying you shouldn't go after Epstein's files. Go ahead.
I think it's interesting when you look on the internet and you see the bigotry on the internet and the people who have been, these conspiracy theories about QAnon and about Jeffrey Epstein. There's a picture of me on the internet, right, where someone has superimposed the face of Jeffrey Epstein over Chris Cuomo and I, like hanging out, and there are people who actually believe it. And people say, well, not all Trump supporters are bigots or racists. Okay, fine, you can believe that. But when I look at all the people who put things like that on the internet, 99 times out of 100, it is a Trump supporter. So people should think about that as they are placing those things on the internet, as they are wearing political messages in the workplace as well.
Yeah. Well, talking about that, there's a fake flight manifest that has like 100.
You're on it.
Yeah, I'm allegedly on it. Obviously, if you want to see who was on that flight, there are court documents, and there's like a handful of people whose names you might know who were, who were ever on any flights of his.
Here's the same tactic they ran. WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, about 2 months for the election in 2016, releases millions of emails. So everybody goes and jumps in them and verifies them and checks them. And there's all these emails about upstate New York and other places with the Podestas, with others, like, hey, we're going to have our Thelema rituals tomorrow. We're bringing the spirit cooking. That's blood. And it's all in there. And there's famous emails where, and it's a well-known woman that ran a service where kids come and play with you, and you can order them online. So it's her delivering the 3 children to John Podesta at the wooded facility, and then they'll be in the hot tub waiting for you for your entertainment. And this is all the reality. Well, how did they divert off? They then had the New York Times and CNN report on 4chan and 8chan diverting off to a pizza place in D.C. that the people were part of, but nothing was really going on there, with imaginary underground torture facilities that didn't exist, so they could go report on the fake story instead of the real stuff over there, you understand? So that's how they were discrediting it, saying, oh, there's no Epstein, there's no pedophilia, it's all fake stuff about us. And that's another thing happening. Somebody's flooding Facebook, X, TikTok with famous footage of Trump at beauty pageants and things like that.
Young girls, these are all AI deepfakes. They're everywhere.
And they march in the little girls. Yeah, and it's admitted fake. You can even see its famous videos of Trump. You can find the original video at a pageant.
But they work. Even if 20% believes it, they work. Some of these clips, I don't know about this one. No. There are some of them that's literally young girls. You'll see like 10-year-old, 12-year-old girls that deepfakes are being made.
It's the one that starts. It's the one that starts with there's a bunch of them, with like a little girl crying on stairs, holding her crotch. It's not pornographic, but clearly the implication she's just been raped, and then it cuts to all these shots of Trump at Mar-a-Lago and stuff that are known videos that we know, and then they mesh them in with all these little girls. They're crying and Trump's pointing at them, and then they cut in. Yeah, it's sick.
Did you see the 2006 phone call that the president made to the PD saying, hey, Ghislaine Maxwell's evil, that story that came out 2 days ago? You saw that? Rob, if you want to pull that up, Trump told Palm Beach police everyone knew about Epstein. Maxwell was evil, go a little bit lower. So why did this story not come out earlier? Why is it coming out now?
Well, this is spinning like it's bad that he said they were bad then, but now he says Ghislaine's not bad now. Roger Stone wrote a book on this. We were all vetting Trump. I was, right before I endorsed him, I was one of the first to do it. It was on record, and it come out in court, that Trump dropped the dime on him 18 years ago because he pulled Virginia Giuffre, who was like 15 and worked there, out, and he got pissed off about it. And so you even have Michael Wolff in recordings going back 5, 6, 7 years. Years of them trying to get him to say something about Trump. He's like, no, he never got a massage. No, he never was around the girls. He was never around the kids. No, but he did drop a dime on me, and he's a piece of shit, and he's the worst guy ever, and he's such a scammer, and he rips everybody off the business, which means Trump beats people. So I mean, it's literally Trump dropped everything Roger Stone told me back when he was trying to recruit me to support Trump, and Trump was going to win, which I got into. He explained how it all worked, and now they're going to attack Trump for this, but it was really Trump first exposed it, and then now all that stuff has come out because Roger lives here. I mean, he's been at Mar-a-Lago since Trump got it. He's been Trump's friend for 50 years. Everything Roger's ever told me has been accurate. I mean, he told me, and by the way, I like Steve Bannon. I don't think Steve Bannon's a bad guy. He was involved with Epstein. Epstein was very politically powerful. He was really the shadow head of the Trilateral Commission. People say he can control these world leaders. He really did. Okay, the emails of Bannon are, how do we overthrow the left and get populists into the UK? And he's asking Epstein advice on that. So, I mean, Bannon calls me all the time and sends me links and says, how do we do this? How do you put pressure on that? Hey, we need to get on this. Bannon works like 18 hours a day. I'm not defending it. I probably wouldn't have hung out with Epstein. But the contacts with him are there, and it's what Bannon always said they were. It was elections. It was contacts, because Epstein was like, you could get any number you wanted, any information from him. So Bannon was going, he even says in the interview, are you the devil? You're a pretty bad guy.
Can you pull up that clip?
But I mean, he's like going to the Trilateral Commission. This is David Rockefeller handed it over to him.
How many hours was that? Did he say 14 hours?
Well, they say there's a whole bunch of hours, but I think all the feds got was like 2 hours.
Wolf has 100 hours. I had Wolf on and we talked about it. Rob played his clip.
The devil, 100%. The devil himself. The devil himself said, "I'm going to exchange some dollars for your child's life."
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
It's a serious question.
Sorry.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Because you have all the attributes. You're incredibly smart. You remember the devil is somebody knows it. The devil's brilliant. You read Milton's Paradise Lost.
No, the devil scares me.
Satan is the
Good for bad for asking this.
Number 1 or 2 archangel. And the reason
exactly.
he goes to hell and leads the rebellion is because he can't be the top guy. And his thing is, I'd rather reign in hell than serve in heaven.
I saw that in a movie once called American Dharma. I don't remember who said it. Okay? We have to go.
Okay, good.
Told him.
So, and so there are, I'm not saying Kabbalah itself is satanic, but any teaching has dark and light side. But Jewish mysticism goes back to King Solomon and even before that. And in the Old Testament, they say you don't get involved in it, but then you get the New Testament start getting written, like there's 30 plus other books, written by the rabbinic mainline, Jewish groups since then. And then
Where did he pick you up at?
there's a bunch of books written by Solomon, and I've actually read them. And that's the symbol of Israel. It's really the seal of Solomon. It's not the Star of David. That's just a made-up modern name. But in all of that, there are experts on it, like serious scholars that don't really practice it, but know how to decipher it. So remember when James O'Keefe got footage inside that showed the temple and gargoyles and everything inside the blue and white striped temple with the gods and goddesses on top of it, and the chimeric gods, mix of animals and humans. So, but by the time O'Keefe got that footage, somebody had erased the answer to the equation. So he had this esoteric equation, and only if you do Kabbalistic research and then all the modern stuff, AI and everything integrated into it, would you then get the answer? And then the answer is the takeover, total enslavement, destruction of humanity, and how they're going to use AI and all these other systems integrated into the banking system to do it. And then when you watch the interview with Bannon, he's talking about, and that interview was like 2018, he's talking about how the AI is already out of control. We don't know how to program it. It's going to take over, but it's okay. We're going to merge with it. And you can see that he's at the highest levels of all of this, planning this with big tech and everybody else. I mean, it's truly insane.
Yeah, by the way, you were mentioned in the files, 14 times? And I think in one of the letters, he said something negative about you and called the president an elephant. I don't know what it was. Jones is crazier than Trump or the elephant. Who's Paul Krasner? Who's Paul Krasner?
He's a globalist. You look him up. Yeah, but there's actually 16 we found now.
16?
Yeah, but I like the fact he doesn't like me.
That's a compliment.
But I love how
similar to Rogan.
I love how my enemies spun it though. They would spin it like Jones is in the files, he won't respond. And I'd see all these comments. I'm like, what do you mean I didn't respond? I just covered it as soon as I knew about it. It's like, but they just throw it out like. Anyways,
who is this guy, Rob?
This is according to Google, this is Paul Krasner, the person that was emailing Jeffrey Epstein. This specific email right here.
Got it. Question for you about Thomas Massey, Rob. Can you pull up the clip with Massey and Bondi? There's a part about Massey and Bondi going back and forth. This is it. I want to get your thoughts on Massey. Go ahead, Rob.
Respond, and then the gentleman can move to the next question. It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out of over 4,700, and we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get. You're a failed politician. He needs to get on these matters.
Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
There is no credible information.
Now, is this actually classified?
I think this is the only time where she was right. But I think Massey also the good guy comparatively. So I'm not putting him down. Just if you look at this one play, because I did see this last night. Well, I didn't sleep last night. I was addicted watching all this. This stuff's too riveting.
Trump derangement syndrome.
They did leave Les Wexler, who's a CIA controller, an owner of Victoria's Secret, a bunch of brands.
He's the one that gave the largest private residence, Manhattan, 54,000 square foot house to Epstein as a gift. That was a $77 million property for no reason.
And he just so happened to own the house that Lutnick moved into next door.
Who owned it? Wexler?
Yep, same
I know that.
In a trust, yeah.
Wow.
It's called
So
common.
he bought it from him. Lutnick bought it from Wexler.
And he didn't even know that, and that's actually true, because I spent hours seeing Lutnick was lying about this. It was just some big Manhattan real estate trust, but it turned out it was owned above it by Wexler and Epstein.
Yeah, I mean, those things you can't control. I live in an area where Paul Castellano, the boss of one of the big, I think it was the Gambino family, or the Colombo family, who owned the house. So, hey, how did you get in the house? Some of those things you can't control. But go back with the story.
Al Capone, like retired director or something?
Yeah, you hear these types of stories. But go back to Massey. Massey saying that about Bondi. You were going to say something.
You would expect that, right? I mean, and people argue about that. If you give favoritism,
I mean, there's so much to say about Massey. I mean, here's the deal.
Close to you that you're supposed to give them a
I've tracked this. I know people that got involved talking to Massey.
Protecting a sick, murderous pedophile. I know it's hard for me.
Emerald Robinson and so many others. Literally just got him asking questions a couple years ago, even before Trump got back in, and Massey was on this because American people want it.
That's what
we're covering.
Back and be like, they're being disrespectful.
And then Trump gets in and says, "Yeah, we're going to go look at it," and then says, "No, there's nothing there. It's a hoax." And we're like, "What do you mean?"
Okay.
And now there's all these documents, and then Trump starts saying, "We got to get rid of Massey. He's a traitor." Trump started that. Trump is committing political suicide again with little cuts. He ran off MTG. I know the inside baseball on that. And I still support him. I've been nothing but persecuted supporting him. I don't get any money supporting him. All I get is attacks and lawsuits from the Democrats. Because overall, it's good what he's doing on so many fronts. He's dismantling the globalists. He's really bringing $20 trillion in jobs back. Already about $8 trillion invested. He's already got energy prices down substantially. So, but I have a responsibility still to report. He went and started a fight with Massey. Why? And made weird statements about his wife after she died. And then he attacked MTG. Listen, MTG isn't running for senator or governor. She's always been a successful woman in her own right. Had a very successful construction company making tens of millions a year. I talked to her, good friends with her. I knew she was going to resign 5 days before she did. She said, "I think I'm going to step down. I can't handle it." And she said, "Alex, this is off record." But then later it came out. She said it again, so you can say it. They had a deep fake AI saying that was cold though from real statements she made basically. She goes, "The last time I really talked to him at any length, he just said, listen, we can't have these files come out because it'll hurt the stock market, it'll discredit America, the faith of credit, basically, and it'll embarrass my friends." Who said that? Trump. Said it to who? Her. And now you got Bondi yesterday saying it in the Congress. But Roger Stone, he was president-elect, said, "Hey, just so you know, this Epstein thing should be a big problem." Roger doesn't mind me saying this now. But he said Trump's had the CIA come to him. He didn't tell me what Trump said, but they have dinner all the time. And he goes, Trump thinks it's going to ruin the economy, and it's a big tar baby, and the Democrats have had the file, and it's a setup, and the intelligence agencies say it can bring down the whole country, so don't expect Trump to, but again, you can see how it's an unending fiasco. Like, in a way, Trump's right, but you can't let them get away with what they did. And again, it's 99% Democrats, so he's giving his main enemies the victory. And then he's talking about how Bill Clinton's a great guy and a nice guy, and too bad he's got to testify to Congress about this. And Ghislaine Maxwell's a nice person, obviously trying to defuse things. And then meanwhile, he comes after MTG, who would literally, eat his shit off the floor previously if he asked her to save the country. And Thomas Massey, who's like a Ron Paul type, who's just very, very serious about his convictions. And so Trump turned them into enemies, made them more popular. Massey's more popular, even though they're trying to primary him, and put out that lie that she was polling bad. So that's why she didn't want to run. Trump didn't want her to run for the Senate. She didn't want to run for the Senate. So they just make up this bull. They attack their own party, and it's the stupidest thing ever. So I mean, again, I need Trump to succeed, but this is so dumb.
Yeah, Yeah, Massey doesn't give me the vibes of a bad guy. When I watch Massey, he gives me the vibes of a good guy that
I'm having some problems pulling your driver's license in your name.
he disagrees with him. What does he say? His famous line is, I'm with the president 91% of the time, and the 9% that I'm not is when we're fighting pedophiles and, a couple other things that he says there.
Attacking Iran. But I mean, that's the other thing.
Okay.
Like Tahoe was pretty.
Was that what you say, Tahoe?
I just want to make sure I got the right person. You know what I mean?
So, sorry. What was I saying?
Massey.
Like squirrel. Yeah, no, Massey's the type of guy that comes off a farmer, nice and friendly. But when you start messing with him, he's going to fight back.
He's a fighter.
And so, and you can tell he actually likes it now once the fight's going. So it's like, Trump, you keep picking fights with some of the...
You think he is a possible candidate for 28 for those that feel Israel's got a little bit too much influence, and for those that don't like the way Epstein was handled, you think he could be a leading candidate for 28?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if he can win, but he can definitely run and get a lot of votes and inject that issue into the larger discussion.
Massey. Yeah, I think he's formidable. I think he's formidable, and he's got a following. There's certain people that swear by him and follow what he has to say, and more and more you see him talk, you're like, okay, I was with Rand Paul the other day at DC, and we're doing a conversation. Of course, he's a libertarian. I've spent time with his dad as well. And you see the way they think is slightly different, but there's logic behind it. There's reason behind it where the average person can say, this guy sounds like a reasonable player. How do you think this is going to end up? And maybe the better question, Alex, is this. How long do you think this is going to be a story that they're going to be talking about?
It would have already been gone, and they would have busted some of these top guys, and we would have moved on, because the trail is cold. The FBI, Epstein, who ordered a truckload of acid and dissolved everything the first day he knew was under investigation. I mean, the really bad stuff's been destroyed and erased. The people that know are the young women that are the survivors that were really accomplices in most cases. So we have the witnesses. We know who they are. They're right there. And that's how they contain the whole thing. Not demonizing them. It's just a fact if you understand investigations. And so the way Trump keeps doubling down stubbornly, it's only going to get worse, a bigger black hole, and it's already just murdering him in the polls, distracting from all the good work he's doing. And his greatest strength is his greatest weakness. He was always, as Roger Stone says, thick-skinned, pig-headed in a good way, doesn't give a damn. And he says that, he said Trump, even before Butler, and all the persecution, had a total I don't give an F attitude. He said after Butler, it was intense. He said now, Trump just does not care. He says, I'm on a mission. I'm to save the country. I know I'm not involved with Epstein. I know it's a diversion. I know it's all the Democrats. So I'm not going to even have this tar baby fight. And if the American people don't want to say things and you want to impeach me in a movie, he literally says in there, people come in and say, sir, we need to do something about this. He'll say, and it used to be like this. He'll start screaming at him. Like, remember, sometimes he goes, I'm sorry, I'm hoarse. I've been screaming at people behind the scenes. And he has a legendary temper. But it used to pop out a lot. Now it's like, fuck.
Specifically on this topic.
Or if you bring up the poison shots, he brought Kennedy in and they're restricting it and cleaning it up. He never admits he's wrong.
Poison shots, you're talking about the vaccine, COVID
Absolutely.
Vaccine.
Yeah. And the thing is that the Democrats can't bully him and the media can't intimidate him. That's a good thing. But then it also, when his constituents are like, hey, this is what we elected you for, that pig-headedness becomes a problem. So it's hurting Trump. I don't see, a month's 1,000 years of politics. Who knows what's going to happen? I hope we win the midterms. Here's what I want to say to the American people. We need to start discussing just being pragmatic. It's terrible. This is bipartisan cover-up. The Democrats act like they're not involved in cover-up. They are. Explain how the cover-up's working. Explain how bad it really is. Who's behind it, the intelligence agencies. And that it's far worse than anybody can imagine. Keep educating. Keep exposing. Discredit the power structure. Discredit the system. And then run candidates for office that are more hardcore and awake. And support Congressman Massey, support Tulsi Gabbard, spend her work, support all the good people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that's just knocking it out of the park, and just say, hey, too bad Trump destroyed his legacy. Too bad, he put a big scar on how wonderful all this was in populism, but populists getting people in is going to be perfect. Populists are winning everywhere. This is the fourth turning. So Trump just rode in on a wave. More waves are coming in. So we don't let Trump define us. We define ourselves by what we stand for. And we are exposing it all. And I'm the guy that first talked about Epstein. So whenever I expose the deep fakes, people go, oh my God, you're covering up for Trump. No, I'm covering the real things he did and calling balls and strikes. So there's a hysteria just to say everything's real instead of actually doing their research. But I think this is going to grievously wound the Trump administration, and it has potential to derail the American recovery.
What happened to the Trump that would fire people? First administration he was in, he fired Scaramucci within 10 days. I think 30 to 40 people that he appointed, he fired. This time around, his retention, he went from 43% turnover on the first term. Right now, they're at 28, 29%. How come he's not firing anybody?
I'd like to answer that question, but I have had a bunch of tea and coffee. I'd like to
use the restroom.
I'd like to piss like a Russian racehorse, sir.
Right there, to your left.
I'll be right back.
You want to go do that, Rob?
A very suspenseful mission to shake a branch.
Go do your thing. Go do your thing. Rob, what clips can we play while we're giving this break here? Because there are many, many different things that we went through. I'm trying to think if we want to go to this one clip that I pulled up. By the way, pull this up, Rob. Why don't you play the clip with the professor? Folks, if you've not seen this, the Epstein files have gotten so crazy that a teacher is approached by someone asking question, and look how this man out of Ohio State reacts when asked about Epstein. Go ahead, Rob.
No. Whoa! I told you not to put that in my face. I didn't.
Dude, you can't do
yes,
that.
You did. No, I'm not gonna ask you again. Don't touch that. Don't touch me, motherfucker. Who the fuck put your hands on me, sir? Put your hands on me, sir. God damn, dude. You shoved that camera into my face, sir. Just one more.
Rob, what was that, Rob? What do we know about what happened there?
Let me see.
Because the guy's been put on leave, right? He's been put on leave since that happened. But think about how many topics are out there that you can ask somebody of that causes this level of sensitivity. Where this guy, let me read the story, an Ohio State professor who was recently hired to help advance speech and civil discourse. Is now on administrative leave after assaulting a documentarian on campus. University officials confirmed Wednesday. On Monday evening, Luke Perez, an assistant professor affiliated with OSU, legislatively mandated Salman P.J. Center for Civics, Culture and Society invited Igor G. to speak to his profiles in American leadership class. And what happened there? What happened to go a little bit over? But after G spoke to the class in the building, DJ Barnes authored the local left-wing newsletter Rooster, and Mike Newman, a local documentarian, intercepted G as he exited a public restroom. They began asking him questions about his awareness of a campus doctor's sexual abuse of student athletes during his presidency. His recent defense of Leslie Wexner, a billionaire, a former board chair of OSU, whose communication with convicted sex offender Epstein are under scrutiny, and his decision to sell OSU parking lot to a private equity firm. That's what it was questioned about. Very, very interesting. How? Can you imagine how deep these stories are that a professor is going wild over a reaction like this? And by the way, in a minute here, when Alex comes back, a clip came out about what happened in Canada. And I'm going to play this clip before Alex is coming up. And by the way, Alex is coming up, so I'll have him watch this because he shared it earlier this morning. And again, for those of you guys that are watching, send a Manek to Alex. Any questions, any thoughts, you can officially
Here. Real demon possession?
We're going to go to that, but I want to ask you the question first. First administration, President Trump fired a lot of people. Mooch got fired within 10 days. Nearly 40 people he appointed got fired. Turnover was 43%. Now turnover's in the 20s. He's not firing people. Why is he not firing people?
I've got a good idea about that, but I didn't answer your question from 30 minutes ago. So or 20 minutes. I should probably answer that first because it answers this question. You asked me, if we were giving Trump advice, what should it be about Epstein? And I really did answer your question.